Working the night shift at a pawn shop wasn't exactly what I had in mind for a career, but it paid the bills, and that was good enough. The shop was an unremarkable place, cluttered with forgotten trinkets, old electronics, and tarnished jewelry. During the day, it was just another shop in a rundown part of town, but at night, something about it felt off. Maybe it was the dark, the quiet, or just the isolation, but I always felt like I was being watched. It was a slow night. A few stragglers came in to pawn their last bits of valuable junk, old phones, worn jewelry, but by 2 a.m., the place was empty. I leaned back in my chair, fighting to stay awake. That's when the door creaked open. A man stepped inside, tall and gaunt, his clothes rumpled like he hadn't slept in days. He was clutching a small wooden box under his arm, his eyes darting around like he was afraid of being followed. I'd never seen him before, which was odd considering the regular crowd that drifted through during these hours. "Can I help you?" I asked, eyeing the box. He didn't answer at first, just placed the box on the counter with shaking hands. It was a beautiful piece, carved with intricate patterns, looking more like something from an antique shop than a pawn store. "I need to get rid of this," he said quietly. I raised an eyebrow. "You don't want to sell it?" He shook his head, his face pale. "Number I just need it gone. I don't care how much you give me, just take it." There was something desperate about the way he said it, something that made me pause. "Why? What's wrong with it?" His eyes flicked up to meet mine, wide and haunted. "Strange things have been happening," he whispered. "It moves on its own. I hear noises coming from it at night, and there's this smell, like metal. I've tried everything, but it keeps coming back. I just need it gone." I stared at the box, feeling a shiver crawl up my spine, but I kept my voice steady. "All right," I said, reaching for the cash register. "I'll take it." Before I could hand him the money, he grabbed my wrist, his grip ice cold. "Don't open it," he said, his voice sharp and urgent. "Whatever you do, don't open it." I nodded, more than a little unsettled. He took the cash, muttered a thanks, and hurried out the door without looking back. Once he was gone, I glanced at the box. It looked harmless enough, just wood and carvings. No strange smells, no noises. I shrugged and put it in a drawer under the counter, out of sight. The rest of the night passed uneventfully, but as I locked up and headed home, a strange sense of unease lingered. I couldn't shake the man's haunted expression, his warning echoing in my mind. I told myself it was just another weird late-night encounter, but still, something about the box bothered me. The next night, I returned to the shop, expecting the same quiet shift. But the moment I stepped inside, something felt wrong. The air was heavy, thick with a metallic tang that made my nose wrinkle. I walked the aisles, checking to see if anything had moved. The keys hanging on the wall were askew, and the doll in the corner, the one I always hated, was facing me. I was sure I had turned it away yesterday. I shook my head. Must have been my imagination. As I settled in behind the counter, I heard it. A faint scratching sound coming from the drawer where I'd stashed the box. My heart skipped a beat. Slowly, I opened the drawer. The box sat there, just as I'd left it, unmoving. I closed the drawer quickly, trying to shake off the growing sense of dread. But as the night wore on, the scratching continued, soft but persistent, gnawing at my nerves. When my shift finally ended, I practically ran out of the shop, the cold night air feeling like a relief against my skin. But the unease followed me home, clinging to me like a shadow. That night, I woke up to the sound of my TV turning on by itself. The static hissed in the living room, and my heart raced as I crept toward it. The TV flickered, casting ghostly light across the room. I hadn't turned it on. As I stood there, the static changed, and a news report flickered onto the screen. The anchor spoke in a calm, detached voice. A man was found dead late last night in an apparent suicide. He jumped from the roof of a downtown building. A photo appeared and my blood ran cold. It was the man from the pawn shop. I stared at the screen, my mind reeling. How could he be dead? He had been in the shop just last night, alive and desperate. Now he was gone, and I was left with the box he'd been so terrified of. The next day, I couldn't focus. I wandered the streets aimlessly, my thoughts consumed by the man's death and the box. When my shift started that night, the shop felt different, darker, heavier. The lights flickered as I unlocked the door, and the metallic smell was stronger, almost suffocating. As I moved through the aisles, I noticed the doll again. It wasn't sitting anymore. It was standing.